Look, I've been drilling these for a long time. These are not fake hand signs.
If you watch UFC, then you definitely know the name Israel Adesanya. He's by far one of the greatest middleweight UFC fighters currently, and is not shy about letting everyone know just how good he is. The Nigerian-born New Zealander was first discovered battling it out in the kickboxing circuit. He excelled, racking up an impressive 32-0 wins as an amateur kickboxer, and a 75-5 record as a professional. Next, he went into the boxing world, and then finally into mixed martial arts, MMA. It is no doubt that Israel Adesanya, otherwise known as the Last Style Bender, has made a huge mark on the UFC world and will continue to excel and succeed in the future. In today's video, we are going to be discussing reasons why Israel Adesanya is considered by many to be the greatest of all time. But before we get into the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel with notifications on so you don't miss any of the new videos we post. Highlights from his career. Before we delve into the GOAT discussion, we thought it was important to highlight different aspects of Adesanya's career and how he got to this point. Adesanya has quickly gone from UFC prospect to UFC royalty in under the span of 2 years. Insane, right? But you may be asking yourself, how did he get to this point? Where did it all start? A little background about the Last Style Bender. He grew up in New Zealand, but was born in Lagos, Nigeria. He's the eldest of 5 children coming in at a relatively middle-class family. He first started out practicing Taekwondo as a young kid, but stopped after an injury. He then relocated to Ghana with his family, but then moved all the way to New Zealand as his parents wanted all of their children to receive a higher education and have a better start to their adult lives in a westernized country. This proved to be very positive for Israel, as New Zealand is where he was able to discover his love and passion for kickboxing, which ultimately led him to where he is today. Oddly, Israel was not into sports at all during high school. He was actually a big anime fan and was actually bullied extensively throughout high school. Adesanya credits being bullied for his decision to pursue martial arts as an adult. Once Israel graduated high school, he actually had plans to do his Bachelor of Science in Computer Design at the Universal College of Learning in Wanganui. At the ripe age of 18, he started training in kickboxing after getting his inspiration from the Muay Thai film Ong Bak. Just 2 years later, Israel decided to quit his studies and pursue his dream of becoming a professional kickboxer. This turned out to be the best decision he ever made, as he went on to amass an amateur record of 32-0 before he finally became a professional. First fighting in China, at the age of 21, Israel decided that he wanted to try his luck in MMA and began training heavily under Eugene Behrman and alongside future UFC fighters including Dan Hooker, Kai Kara-France, and Alexander Volkanovski. Israel continued fighting professionally as a kickboxer and boxer, becoming extremely well known and winning tournaments, championships, and titles. However, the big time really came after he got into MMA and began winning match after match. Israel professionally debuted in 2012 with a TKO win against James Griffiths, and shortly after, another win against John Vake. Following these 2 wins, he took a 2-year hiatus and returned in August 2015 to continue his winning streak. He went on to amass an 8-0 record, fighting mostly within the Chinese circuit. In December 2017, it was announced that Israel had signed a lucrative contract with the UFC, which is a massive deal for any professional fighter. He made his official debut against Rob Wilkinson on the 11th of February 2018 at UFC 221, winning the fight with a TKO in the second round. This win was not only a special moment for Israel, being his first fight ever in the UFC, he has also earned the Performance of the Night bonus. As you can probably already tell, Israel went on to win pretty much every match he had, and quickly earned a big name for himself and public recognition. However, after his win against UFC middleweight champion Anderson Silva, he really earned his spot as one of the greats within his weight range. In July of 2019, Israel went up against Kevin Gastelum for the interim UFC middleweight championship at the UFC 236. This was a huge deal and a huge event, which Israel ultimately won. The fight earned him the Fight of the Night award. Following this epic match, he went on to win his match against Rob Whittaker for the UFC middleweight championship. This now meant that Israel was the UFC middleweight champion. In March of 2020 at the UFC 248, Israel was facing the 3-time UFC title challenger Yoel Romero. And as you can probably already guess, Israel won the fight via unanimous decision, defending his title. Israel is set to move up a weight range now into the light heavyweight championship in March 2021 at UFC 259. It will be interesting to see how he performs now that he is out of his comfort zone, and to see if he still possesses the strong winning streak he had in the middleweight category. Championships and accomplishments. we quickly wanted to list off some of Israel's most notable championship wins and titles, as this had led him to where he is today. UFC Middleweight Championship, Interim UFC Middleweight Championships, Performance of the Night, won 5 times, Fight of the Night, won twice, most knockouts in a UFC title fight, Australian Fighting Championship, Hex Fighting Series Middleweight Champion, 2019 Fighter of the Year, awarded by multiple websites and credible sources. And of course, he has many other accomplishments within MMA, kickboxing, boxing, and the UFC. However, the ones listed are the most memorable and high profile. Why is Israel the GOAT? Israel Adesanya has quickly transitioned himself from UFC prospect to UFC royalty in a very short time span, just 2 years. He came into UFC as a small MMA fighter from New Zealand and soon became the undefeated middleweight champion, beating out the iconic Yoel Romero for the title. The MMA GOAT conversation has been circling the internet as of recently and has many debates about who is in fact the greatest of all time within all the different weight divisions. It all started after khabib nurmagomedov announced that he would be retiring at the UFC 254. Otherwise known as the Eagle, he defeated Justin Gaethje with a second-round knockout and said it was his final fight in the UFC. This sparked a conversation about who is the greatest of all time, and Adesanya couldn't help himself and quickly chimed in. Anderson Silva, another top contender for the greatest of all time, has also recently had his last fight against Uriah Hall. Currently, Anderson Silva is the front-runner for the GOAT title, but with a 20-0 record. Israel Adesanya is definitely going to take over this title in a few years if he continues to perform the way he is now. When asked about Silva in an interview, Israel said, quote, "One of the greatest, if not greatest of all time. For me, I didn't want to at first. I've been on record to say there's no need." Israel isn't shy about admitting that it's his time to be the king of his division. He continues, "But I have to do it. I had this dream, and I don't know. I talked to my coach and I was like, yeah, I think this is how it's supposed to play out. He, Silva, is the GOAT, but I'm Nigerian. I've been eating goat meat since I was a kid." Adesanya added, "This is normal to me. It's normal. Anderson's fights, I've watched all his fights. I know him better than he knows himself in some ways, because I'm on the outside looking in. I watched him on DVDs for so long, and I was like, this man is the man." Israel seems to think the whole concept of a GOAT is silly and not important to him at all. When asked about his opinion on the whole thing, he made it clear that he was not a fan of the idea, since it simply depends on others' opinion. In an interview on Submission Radio, he said, "People just have to understand the whole GOAT talk, the whole pound-for-pound list is made up. It's literally people fighting over made-up stuff. It's made up. It's all subjective, and this is opinion. Everyone's allowed to have who they think is the GOAT." Israel continued, "It's just silly how everyone's arguing over it. Like, it's funny how Jones tweeted right after Khabib won. He said, 'I stepped down and relinquished my GOAT title, and you can take this.' And then he comes back and starts crying over Twitter. All this GOAT talk is not fun. Don't get me wrong, but what does it mean?" Regardless of how Israel feels, the GOAT debate will continue on. But just like how he pointed out, it will be always a subjective matter, and no one will ever agree. Although Israel isn't a fan of the GOAT discussion, many of his fans and UFC fans alone believe he deserves the spot for the middleweight fighter. The short period of time it took him to rise through the ranks and reach the #1 spot was unheard of and a very rare occurrence in the UFC world. He is following in the footsteps of some of the greatest fighters of all time, and we can't wait to see him progress even further in the future. Well, this is all that we can fit in today's video, but if you enjoyed it, make sure to give this video a big like and subscribe so you never miss any of our other content. Thanks!